name is Beuford Smith, and I'm honored to sit with these and interview these two great people and fine artists, but above all, they're my dear friends. I met Herb Robinson in 1965 when I was about, 10 years old? I was introduced to the Kamongi workshop by Roy DeCarava. That's how I met Herb. And in 1981, I met Eve Sandler at, what was it? I forget the event for the women's?
One of the protests that I was doing at the moment, which was a group of people came together to do a candlelight vigil in Harlem to protest it was African Americans Against Violence. My sister actually was very involved with that. Shout out to Kathy. And was started by Meg Henson Scales when Al Sharpton was planning to give Mike Tyson a welcome home parade after being released from prison.
And I also feel privileged concerning this book, because before the pandemic, Herb and I used to have breakfast at least 6 times a year. And we would each show each other photographs. And some of these photographs that are in the Metro, I previously had seen them. Our last meeting, our last breakfast, I should say, was back in, 2019 or something? Right. Yes. And Herb would bring like 13 by 20 photographs. I would have my little 5 by 6 snapshots. And I would go through my photographs real quick, but Herb would take some time to show his, which became the future Metro photographs. And Herb would show the photographs, but it was going on and on. So I would finish my breakfast and Herb was still showing photographs. But it's all worth it because it turned out to be the Metro. And I would talk to Herb, call him sometime and say, Herb, what's going on? He'd say, well, I'm working on the book. I don't know if you can hear me. This should be And I would say, Herb, I'm tired of hearing about the book. I want to see the book. So here's the book.
Thank you, but could I interject?
It's on top.
Yeah. I want to interject. I think it was Paul Masson commercial. You will sell no wine before it's time.
Okay.
And the Metro has arrived.
Yes, yeah. And I would also like to comment on the Metro arrival. A lot of photographers have taken photographs of the subway stations, whether in France or London or wherever, or New York. Most photographers have photographed the subway station. But I'll go back to the Walker Evans book, which set the pace to a certain extent. But what Herb has done, he's extended from Walker Evans' regular portraits on the trains to a whole glamour of London, Paris, New York, and Herb's photographs show the humanity of people. I promised I was going to go to my notes, but I guess I have to. So getting this is that Herb's photographs show a melting pot. Oh, I forgot this goes up. Do I have to comment on this?
Is that the cover?
No.
Go back to the cover.
Herb's photographs show a melting pot of humanity. There's ethnic groups, Christians, Jews, etc. And Herb's photographs add an amount of humility and humor to the photographs. After this book, you see this book, I don't think you can get on the subway station or the train or whatever and not think of Herb's book. You say, oh, that looks like a photograph that Herb Robinson took. So he has nailed it as far as I'm concerned, his photograph, taking photographs in the subway station. I don't feel guilty when I take a picture now, which is a good thing. And the other thing is, getting back to Herb and I showing photographs at breakfast. The last time we had breakfast at the Good Stuff restaurant on 14th Street, again, I had finished my breakfast. As I was leaving, one of the waiters came over and started talking to Herb concerning his photographs. I was gone for a couple of minutes and came back. They were still talking. I wanted to say, excuse me, because I want to show my photograph. But I didn't say anything. But he spoke for about maybe 10 minutes with her. Because at the restaurant, we could hang out, not say hang out, but we would have our breakfast and we would stay there until like noon. So there was no rush. And plus, Herb's photographs were large, so he could put them on the table and no one said anything. But the last time Herb, I didn't get to show my photographs. So, but it was worth it. Here's the Metro. Thank you.
Thank you.
You want to start looking at the photo?
Oh. This photograph is one of my favorites. That the woman is staring, I don't know if she's staring into space. Well, it could be, but it's very strong, and you're definitely attracted to what is she looking at? Is she peaceful, or what's going on with this? And I would like to also ask, what color is that? Is that yellow or orange?
It's actually the chapter opener for New York. All the chapter openers start with, this image is actually cropped, and it will appear in the book later in its full size. But the chapter openers sort of show an image from the book, from that chapter, cropped as though you're seeing them through a window in the subway. And the color of that yellow, that golden yellow, is a design device I use throughout the whole book. It's a unifying color in the subways of New York, London, and Paris. And it's a very vibrant color. And so it's a graphic device that ties a lot of sections together. So I'm gonna go on. This begins New York. And
Yes.
love this picture. We're not gonna be able to stop on every picture.
This is an example of actually informal balance. There's balance can be formal or informal. I love informal. The guitar is leaving the frame on the right. The scale of the guitars as opposed to the train leaving the station on the left, which is smaller in scale. For me, that is beautiful balance because very much like a pitcher in a baseball game. There are a few ways to throw a strike: straight over the plate, or informally curve. And the curve is a sweet, beautiful, lyrical strike. So that's an example of informal balance. Go ahead.
I would like to digress a little bit. One thing that was very important with the breakfast Herb and I would have. I keep going back to that. It's important.
Beuford, did you bring your pictures?
Now you tell me. Ask me. One thing was very important also. We discussed jazz and photography. We did not discuss sex, religion, and the third one was politics. That was off the table. It never came up. We just talked about jazz and what you see in these photographs that came out. Thank you.
So just on that note of jazz, I'll leave out the subject of politics, sex, what were the other things? Religion. Just on the note of jazz, all three of us are sort of jazz heads, and Herb and I have a relationship that revolves around a lot of jazz conversations and analogies between his photographs and jazz and all of that. As a matter of fact, I feel like jazz is a theme in the book as well.
For sure.
Herb's images and my graphic response and the quotes sort of being kind of riffs on what Herb lays out and call and response, sort of. You know.
Yeah. And talking about quotes, I noticed you go from Lady Gaga to Al Sharpton. So that's quite a leap.
And I go back to quotes from King George VI and through history, because I think the quotes can sort of create some context about each location, and they all have different histories, but all three cities are sort of a wealth of diversity of people from all over the world, although they have come over different time periods for different reasons, colonialization. The histories are very different in each city, but the diversity is one of the great beauties that you do see in Herb's photography. We sort of see humanity on a fantastic journey, as we all are journeying in our lives, in our daily lives, whether it's to work or to school, or to areas of service that you can't find in your own neighborhood. We all ride the subway, and it is a human journey. And one of the things that really attracted me to this particular series, which is very much a continuation of Herb's early street photography from the 1960s, you can see so many of the themes in these photographs. I love this photo of this incredibly elegant, fierce woman on the train, and with her fan and her just amazing attitude. She's a New Yorker, right? I mean, she's a real New Yorker. And I don't know if can you see the quote? Yeah. Oh, great. I don't have to say it. But can I go to the next one?
Sure, but I'd save you some space for her here.
No, go right ahead.
Oh, okay. Do you want to say something about this?
No, I thought that you wanted to read Lady Gaga.
They could see it. They said they could see it, which is great. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you see that? You could read this one?
I can't read it over here.
Okay. I'm afraid I'm gonna fall off. Let me just. I'm from New York. I will kill to get what I need. Lady Gaga. She is really a New Yorker. No, we don't have to read or hear all the quotes, but.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask her, when you started doing this book, did you think in terms of quotes going with it? Or?
No, in fact.
So how did you and Eve get together on this?
Okay. It was actually Eve in this collaborative union. Eve is the art director. I work for Eve. At a certain point.
You don't have to go there.
Never.
No, I'm going to compress this, but this book evolved in such a beautiful way, and it harks back to even our friend and my friendship. So it's all.
Hard to hear you.
You have to hold it close.
Can you hear me now? The evolution of our friendship is very much what took place here, to answer Peter's question in terms of the quotes. The book didn't start off with the quotes, and it was Eve's brilliance to come to this realization that to bring the book to another level, we would need some dialoguing going on. And I purposely stepped out of this project and let Eve take over, because many of you know that I was involved in the previous book, Timeless, which Rizzoli has here also in the bookstore, but where I did a lot of heavy lifting to bring that book to fruition. And fortunately, when I decided not to design and create my own book, there was only one person that, thankfully she said yes, there's only one person that can get inside my head, which is not an easy head, to get inside my head and carry out not only my vision, but further and beyond. Because I'm always pushing myself, I compete with myself. Very much like Miles, I don't stay in one slot.
You had to get the D train.
Yeah, exactly. So when I came to the realization that coming off of Timeless, I'm not going to tackle this huge project, immediately Eve. And calling Eve, and she gladly said, oh yes, I'm on board. So that's where it started. And I had to give you that backstory because it's an extremely important story, extremely important. Because no one could satisfy me producing this product. No one.
And it shows. Excellent work, beautiful,
Yes.
beautiful design, quotes, etc., etc.
Over 40 years of friendship. This is my brother, and I just have to say it's a very special friendship. We've been there for each other for a very long time, and a lot of jazz conversation.
Well, what's next? Well, a lot of these quotes definitely work with the photographs as far as I'm concerned, but I also didn't know half of the people who made the quotes. But so I've learned from that, and I've also learned a lot from her photography and your design. So what's the next photograph? Can we have time? Now, that killing it, my son, Cesar Smith, has that on one of his t-shirts, killing it. So I think you showed that at one of our breakfasts, didn't you? Yes.
I don't want to be left out of the breakfast. I've had breakfast with the two of you on 14th, on 23rd Street.
That's right. But, okay, yeah. Now, I want everyone to hear this. After this is over, the three of us will have breakfast, and the breakfast is on Eve.
We gotta sell a whole lot of books.
That was nice.
Do you want to say something
No.
about Killing It? We all three of us agree that Killing It is a fantastic photo. The angles, the space. Herb has been very influenced by cinema, by jazz. And I think there's that surrealist sort of quality in some of these photos that you'll see with very radical, eccentric cropping. Whoops. Okay, this may
That's
be
one of my
Herb's
favorite photographs. Well, I love the composition. I noticed, Herb, that a lot of your photographs in this particular book were taken at a low angle, or did you bend down, or you held the camera? How did you go about that? Go ahead and tell me. Tell us.
I can't give you all of my secrets, but I use I have been fortunate to have a day job as an advertising photographer. I was a still life photographer, shooting a lot of ads and a lot of situations, location as well as studio, for quite a number of decades.
So is this a McLaurin ad?
No.
Oh, okay. I didn't think so.
I wasn't going there, but the discipline of using a view camera 8x10, 4x5, and the controls, the angles, and being able to, for instance, in this room, to really zone this room, and if I want a particular person highlighted, what angle would I be at in order to achieve that? All of that discipline comes into play more than whatever X amount of years later when I'm doing Metro, because I don't need to have the camera in front of me or looking through the view camera. I basically zone, and I know exactly what I'm gonna get. You know? But this didn't happen overnight. You know? When I started, I had a full head of hair. So, in losing the hair, I gained. So, that expertise was a course to bear, you know. But,
I mentioned you had a head of hair.
so to answer your question,
Can I add that question?
Go ahead.
Which is, I know that when you shoot, you're often shooting from the hip, and you're not like sort of capturing people. You're kind of hiding.
I was going to go there, but you.
You're not in their faces.
Right. I do all of the above. There are times when, and we will see a few images where I am looking through the viewfinder, you know, but quite often I'm shooting here and looking here. And I know exactly. I don't have to look at the LCD screen in the back to say, oh, did I get it or no? I know. Once I click, I know I got it.
And what about getting permission to photograph? Did you get permission to photograph?
Let's not discuss permission. Please, let's not.
What her?
No, you can't. You first of all, it's public domain. You cannot go around. Great example with release form to each person.
Okay, I was just curious of how you got a lot of these shots.
This is another favorite of mine. I think it's a favorite of yours as well, Beuford.
Oh, yes, definitely.
This photo is so interesting, but I think some of the things that I love in this series that harken back to some of her earlier black and white work on the streets in urban settings has to do again with the radical cropping. Beuford, you mentioned all the things going on at once in this photo.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was kind of looking at my notes and then the days too. Overwhelmed by these photographs. Well, there's three of us, but we came to the same conclusion about how wonderful this photograph is and the composition. The other thing is that the words of, in fact, I was glancing at my notes when you caught me. Sorry. You know, the words of banter, organic, and a couple other words are thrown out about photography and about writing or whatever, but I think in Herb's photographs, all those words come to place. And before this is over, I'll find them in my notes. So we'll go on to the next picture.
You talked about the woman. Remember you said, what is she looking for in her bag? Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes. But I don't want to take up too much time, so I don't know what the
Well, this photo
signal
to
is.
me speaks worlds. And Beuford, you said, what is that woman looking for in her bag? And that's a good question. And then this blind man and the color. And then on the edge, if you look at the bottom left-hand corner, the fingernails of a woman who's cropped out of the photo. Really funky cropping. And he does it in camera. He doesn't go crop this stuff later. It is sort of lending the surreal quality that you will find in his photos. And you were grabbed by the woman on the right, but I was just taken with the woman. We can't see anything but her fingernails. Look at those fingernails.
And now that I'm looking at this, I don't want to take up too much of your time. Excuse me, Herb. For some strange reason, now that I look at this photograph, the guy doesn't seem to be blind to me.
He's blind.
He's blind, okay.
But also, I believe strongly in I'm going to superimpose over the phrase we all know: location, location, location. Okay. Here, information, 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 choice, and choice, and choice. To choose what to believe in and to choose what to leave out. It's extremely important, and that's why Eve hit upon it a few minutes ago. 90% of my shooting involves cropping in camera. I don't leave space corners, top, bottom. I feel what I'm shooting, which renders. That's it. And it took me a long time to arrive at that, but that's how I work, you know. And it doesn't become work; it becomes ecstasy. It's the greatest high.
Right. Now, one of my notes with one of the words I was going to use came out when you were talking, and that's organic with the photographs. That's one of the words I was looking for.
I have 2 words to add to that. Edge tension. If you look at this photograph, part of the dynamic is that edge tension where there's stuff being cropped so radically off the edge, it creates this amazing framing. And to me, that's very notable as well. Okay, next.
Excuse me. You got me started, but this will be very brief, as both Eve and Beuford know. My love of cinema, you know, I just love cinema. So Orson Welles and Greg Toll and Citizen Kane, they worked on quite a few movies together. But the Blind Man, as an example, the influence that those two have had on me, plus a lot of other directors and cinematographers. It is what I channel, you know, so basically.
So we had to get through New York, but London and Paris, right? So, sorry. Okay, now it's one last New York shot. And here I think you see the extraordinary diversity of people in New York. And I just want to say, at a time when there's just so much, so many freedoms being taken from us here and abroad, that, and there's so much hatred of the other resurfacing in our world. I hope Metro is a reminder of how beautiful we are in our diversity as human beings on this human journey. And underground is where we can find just about everyone. Everybody's sort of equal on the subway. And I just hope that we can get it together to be on this human journey together. But the thing about this series, and Herb has so many photographic series that are really all deserving of attention, but I think it was the way that he's captured our humanity and the breadth of our humanity on the subways. And now we'll get to the next city.
What city is this?
We're in London.
London.
Now here we have an Asian woman and the other was considered Asian, Middle Eastern. Is that a reason why they were put together like this, or Eve? I'm sorry.
I think there isn't a lot of rhyme or reason or consistency about why I've placed certain photos together, except that it sort of creates stories. Here we have 2 different women. I think you can see from their dress that there's different cultural things. I love that kitty collar on this woman. The kitty collar is so fantastic, and the hijab is beautiful. There's just certain juxtapositions that to me were really effective, and I think that quote is from a character from a children's book, Paddington Bear, right?
Paddington Bear,
Yeah, so London is such an interesting city again for diversity. It's got its, you know, the British have their own colonial history. I just like these two women together, and they're not similar, but they're sort of similar, maybe, perhaps, in age, perhaps.
And I think it works very well.
Glad you like it.
But one thing I would like to mention, get back to it though, was the kitty collar.
Oh.
Now that, see, I interpret that as a different thing. I find humor in it, and I also find it sort of like it's choking the lady, because the way she's like scared. But that's just my take.
I think there's a lot of awkwardness in some of these pictures. There's a lot of people in their own zones. I think one thing you see in Herb's photos is how people create these zones of privacy, even though they're sometimes in crowds. People have this way of creating their own space, and well, we'll see some more. Oops.
Yeah, the woman with the skateboard, and they're leaving. Now these two, well, not these two, the one on the left is totally different from the ones you've shown before her. The angle, and Eve put them together like that. But why the angle on this one?
That's how I saw it.
Okay. But it's totally different from any other angle in the book. The others are like shot from the hip and more composed. This was like, okay, over like that.
Okay. Again, many decades. Same with you. I mean, you have been shooting for quite some time. So
15 years.
So, and what's the phrase you quite often use? You're not a one-trick pony. So,
Okay.
but
I think it works, but it definitely got my attention. Well, why did Herb take this one? Okay, you answered. Okay.
yeah, no, I saw it and I felt it.
All right, that's it.
I would say that there are so many photographs in this series, but Herb also shot in Barcelona, in Portugal, in Amsterdam. So part of this was, you know, it's a curatorial process of deciding what I wanted in there and then figuring out what to do with it. There's a, you know, an embarrassment of riches.
Right. Now, I don't want to get into behind the scenes what went on with this, but I know Herb. He's a very quiet guy, but once he says, put his foot down, that's it. So I'm quite sure you and Herb were going back and forth.
No.
No? Oh, okay.
No. Not really, not really.
Okay, we'll move on.
No comment.
No comment, really. Okay. This is a rare case where I did a pairing.
Well, I really
This is a
need to
rare-
move on to the next slide.
Yeah, this is just a rare case where I paired things around color. It was just, they had to go together.
The blue hair and, okay.
Okay. Can I just, this is an example where the quotes, okay, we did go back and forth on this picture, I'll admit it.
Yes.
So, here she is, and the quote, there's a quote from Queen Elizabeth and a quote from Afua Hirsch. And basically, there's a dialogue going on about the Commonwealth. And that is a dialogue that's going on all over, you know, Britain and all over the world. So there's that.
Well, looking at this photograph, I noticed that the London subway train seems to be very posh compared to the New York subway trains. Yeah, now look at that.
I just want to add, and this reflects back to when I said no comment.
It's this photo.
Yes, it's this photo. This is a photo that I'll Oh, wait. This is a photo that I fought for because this is. Hello?
You didn't hold it really close.
Hold it.
Can you hear me now? This is an extremely radical photo. And Eve felt that, well, we have enough, we have other photos to choose from, so to take this space and Beuford. So.
Oh, I'm listening. I'm sorry.
This is where I put my foot down.
Okay.
Just to answer that, there were photos that were really hard to pair on the page. And I really could not pair this with another photo. So the quote really helped out here because there was an opportunity you can make this a spread. And when she got all her space, she was very satisfied.
But again, it's all in the creative process, and also.
Oh boy, maybe we should move on.
Okay, hold the train. We gotta talk about this picture. I mean, look at all the detail in this picture. It's amazing. And this woman putting her makeup on with all the sort of classical Western painting stuff going on in there, the reflection of the people of her back of her head, across from her. And it turned out that in London, men were protesting that women were putting makeup on the train. In New York, nobody gives a damn. But in London, men were protesting this. It was sort of a lack of decorum. And
That's the British.
that's the British. And I said, oh, I've got to find a quote about this because I looked for months, and finally turned out that this fashion editor wrote a little ditty about it. And, so I got to turn around. It's worthy to be read. Chanel, Rimmel, Armamacolage, put them on the train carriage. Chanel liner, MAC foundation, mixing up a little creation. Estee Lauder, Bobby Brown. Get my face on before we hit the town. Kate Finnegan. Woo, woo. Woo.
That's why I collaborated with Eve. I just want to add briefly. I mentioned Greg Tolan, who's a cinematographer on the famous Citizen Kane, along with Orson Welles, and they were from the school of deep focus. Okay. Deep focus. We've all seen movies, various directors utilizing deep focus, and deep focus is when your foreground and background are as one. They're both sharp. This is an example of deep focus, but the way I see it is I exploited when I was framing this shot. And this is one that she was in my studio. The group in my studio, so my head sitting across, Ann and I sitting across from the subjects. It was as if I was directing in my studios for a group shot. Where deep focus comes in, where the curve of the glass.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah. I've shot, and I've shot so many ads using the plexiglass or even fine crystals, and so that material and the reflections, refractions, all of that comes into play. Plus, the practitioners of cinema, you know, where I'm more than comfortable with it. I see it, feel it, and then click. So because the curvature of the window, the glass behind, and the reflection, it merges and it stays sharp. So that's why the clarity, and I chose to do that to make sure everything is sharp. Unlike quite a few photos in the book that you will see that they're blurred or they're semi-blurred. There's some are sharp in some areas, so anyway. But that's,
and I also see a class, not necessarily class, but middle class folks here.
Yeah, you see all the class structures on the subway, which is why it's such a great portable studio, I think.
Without a doubt.
Okay. How are we doing on time? I think we're gonna have to go a little faster. Any comments on this?
Well, I'll ask a question. Is that there's jubilation going on the right, and the woman to the left, like she has a mask, an African mask, shawl, really, but it's not a mask, but it looks like a mask with the eyes and the mouth. I see that as an African mask, and she's got 3 suitcases there, and she seems very lonely. I guess it's because you shot it from behind, and it juxtaposed next to these folks, and they're all in jubilation, and well, the couple there, the woman. I think those two work together.
Well, I do think from a formal issue, from a formal point of view, the polka dots on the woman's dress on the left, they're sort of echoed in the ceiling on the right a little bit, without being, literal. And of course there's that jubilant young girl, they're young people, the business people coming out of the subway, escalators, but there just seemed to be a formal relationship between the colors. And of course, these cities are big tourist areas, people come and go. There's a lot of stories, of course, within each photo. But I think we gotta rush to London.
Now, this is one of my favorite photographs.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like the people in the background are in a tunnel, squeezed together in a way. And the 3 gentlemen up front, they're at leisure. They're like someplace else. But the other people are like packed in, they're not really packed in, but they're in close proximity of each other. And the other people are just very leisure. So why don't those people move into the other part of the train? That's my comment on that picture. It's puzzling.
Well, I think the quote actually says a lot about the British Reserve and why they're sort of standing the way they are. And it's a quote from, who's it, Germaine Greer?
Germaine.
Who used to be a very well-known feminist, British feminist. But the quote is, even crushed against his brother in the tube, the average Englishman pretends desperately that he is alone.
That answered my question.
It's a great photograph, I agree. Okay, we're at Paris.
Finally.
How chic. Parisian chic. Fashion changes, but style endures. Coco Chanel.
Sorry.
Fashion changes, but style endures. Coco Chanel. You don't get more chic than a Parisian woman. I have a friend who's in town. Is she here? She's Parisian. Where's Florence? Okay. The epitome of chic. Thank you, Florence. I'm so glad you're in New York. But yeah, look at this woman. She's the height of chic. Isn't she not?
Florence,
Florence sets the pace, honey.
For the economy of time.
We love this photo as well. To me, you have this brother seated sort of in the center of this image, and there's sort of a sense of circular swirling around him, which I also find in many of Herb's photos. I love that circular sort of motion, even though nobody's moving. And the sense that you do find sometimes in these photos, that even in a crowd, everybody's in their own space, in their own thoughts, and there's a certain separation. At the same time, there's sort of a group experience happening.
This is an example of me drawing from 17th century painter Peter Paul Rubens. Okay. Again, another major influence, because in fact I have a phrase for Peter Paul Rubens, his work, and that's distilled energy. And this was a photo that I was proud to take. When I saw this photograph, I said, okay.
The woman in the foreground, and the gentleman right behind her, and then the woman to the right. Everybody seems to be in their own space, or what? Not space, but serenity or whatever. Then there's the young man to the left there with the earphones.
I'm sorry.
Right. But there's a certain quietness to this photograph. This is one of my favorite photographs in the book. Is this one? I think my attention goes to this woman in the foreground reading a paper there. And this is also a class photograph as far as I'm concerned. Everybody's nicely dressed. There's no, I would say, foreigners looking with, what you call them, bombs? I'll leave that alone. But everybody seems to be, white Anglo-Saxon or whatever, and except the black man, of course. But it's a class photograph as far as I'm concerned. And it's a very strong image with the woman up front like that in the foreground. Another one of my favorites, but go ahead.
This image, okay, we're getting to the end, sorry. Here, one thing I noticed in France is that a woman of a certain age is still valued, can still be attractive and chic. You don't lose your value at the middle age, like I feel like in our disposable society. And I think with this woman, there's also the echo of the younger woman in the photo nearby her. And here the quotes are from 3 very renowned French women writers. And they are all addressing women and at some level aging. And I found that to be great, that with this photo, I thought, oh, I can put these women in conversation together, Colette, Georges Sand, and Simone de Beauvoir. What a great opportunity, and they're all talking about the experience of women. Okay.
I don't know what kind of time we have. Maybe we should just sit through them and not get into a commentary so we can have a Q&A.
Well, that's it. We're almost at the end.
Yeah.
I mean, here,
There's only a couple left.
there's only a couple left. I do say, get a book and see all the photos. Here is a quote from Ellery Washington. It's just a quote that just remarks on there's a long-standing history with African Americans going to Paris, looking for freedom from racism. But also in the Paris chapter, you're gonna see that many people of color in Paris today who are not American are experiencing racism. So it's sort of this dual kind of thing going on. This is a great photo to end on. Love this photo. It's such a great example of the abstraction that you'll find in earlier work of Herb's. It's in the continuum of his work today. And Blurry Train. I think it's so beautiful.
I think you said it all.
Yep, you said it all. I'd like to make one comment or ask a question here. What's your next collaborative? If there is one.
I don't know yet. But
Eve?
there will be one.
Thank you.
Right now, I'm working on a novel, and I'm sort of just began singing again. It's the great joy of my life. So I'm writing more. And Herb and I have this friendship that is a great collaboration. Includes the whole family. So, I mean, we are putting an exhibit together of the Metro series, and hopefully it will be traveling from museum to museum. One of the reasons I wanted to work on this project was to make sure that Herb's work would be known near and far and come to a greater audience. And actually, Herb is in a show opening of Kamonge photographers from the original group.
Beuford also.
Beuford is in the show too. Beautiful show. Was at the Whitney. That will be opening at the Getty very soon.
Thank you. Oh, one thing I'm acting like Columbo here. One more thing. Everyone heard that Eve is going to treat Herb and I to breakfast.
I'm happy to do it.
And thank you too.
Did you want to do audience?
Thank you.
Thank the board.
First, we'd love to thank Rizzoli for this wonderful invitation. My mother loved Rizzoli very much. I wish she could be here with us today. But I'd also like to add, we have one of our editors here today, Cheryl Weber from Schiffer, who published our book, beautiful book. Thank you so much. Joe Lang, thank you so much for keeping the books flowing. There are a lot of special people here today, and we thank you all for your support and kindness during this process. Oh, Joanne Chase, thank you for contributing a quote. I'd just like to say, I'm grateful that we're able to gather here in New York, and we are on the land of indigenous people, the original people here, so we always must acknowledge that.
Thank you.
Do you want to do any audience questions?
Oh, questions.
Or should we wrap up? We'll do a couple questions, okay? So just maybe 3 or 4. We have to kind of move along. Okay. So I'll let you guys pick on whoever you want in the audience.
I like that, pick on.
Yeah. So raise your hand if you have a question.
Joe.
Yeah, a couple of quick questions, Fred. The photos are beautiful. My question is, how close are you getting to the subject? And how are you keeping, like, do people see that you're taking pictures? How do you navigate that?
Okay. Firstly, it varies. You know, there are times when I'm extremely close, a couple of feet away, and again, I use my immigrants, and so extremely close, a few feet, or some, it all depends. I don't think, actually, very much like a pitcher. I don't think, I just throw straight.
We've got one right over here.
Oh, one here?
Hi,
Hang on.
great picture. Just
Oh, I'm sorry.
the timing, because some, they seem
sitting, or a lot of the shots seems like if you just waited half a second longer, it would be gone.
Excellent. There are times. It's really it's operating on auto. You know, I'm feeling you right now. I'm feeling you right now. You know, and you're putting on your mask. You know, and there's a dialogue going on, and I just react. You know, so it's really there's no formula.
I do know he gets it in one shot. He gets the shot.
Oh,
He gets it at the right moment.
one shot?
That's it.
You don't do two?
Okay, you're talking about bracketing, the old form, one up and one down, one in the
No,
middle.
no, just like two in a row.
Okay, 90% is one shot. There are times when I have no choice, I'm human, you know, where I need to take maybe 3, but very rarely do I take 4, 5, 6, 7, you know, and that's
In other words, the old Cartier-Bresson decisive moment.
the decisive.
I have looked at every subway photo, every single one he's ever taken. It's rare that there's a second shot. And when there was a second shot, it's a different shot. And it's consciously different. That's all I gotta say. Hats off.
One or two more? You can do quick ones.
Yes, gentlemen.
If you have the opportunity, would you like to shoot the Moscow?
I don't know, I can't answer that. I don't know.
Another question?
See, that's why Herb and I never discuss politics, sex,
What kind of camera are you using, and do you ever do any digital photography?
Okay, great question, because this is the first book that every single photo in this book is digital. But I don't get hung up on digital or analog, film camera, digital. It's a machine. It's the software. Every one of us, we have our own software. The machine, you know, is secondary. So it doesn't matter what you shoot. It doesn't matter what you shoot with.
Yeah.
Hello. Really happy that I'm able to catch this. The question I have is about collaboration and the synergy that you two have. And it just kind of, maybe you already answered this, so if you have, no worries. But just as a aspiring photographer, to have like someone that's really has taken the time to understand your work, to work on this piece. I guess the question is, what has been in collaboration? I know that there's challenges. What has been kind of like the driving force that's kept like the project together through completion?
The love for each other and the respect for each other.
Trust.